that to get it in a position, I mean, Mr. Barber, who's our computer whiz kid, was able to do the Google stuff yesterday and indicates that other materials, the car function, are the doors locked, are they unlocked, is it in gear, is it not in gear, and the information about other functions of the vehicle. It's just amazing what they capture. I mean, it's scary because they know everything about how you're operating your vehicle and speed, where you are, all those sorts of things. We're getting that, and our experts are downloading it. We think there's some relevance to those other databases, but I can't represent to you here today that it is or it isn't, but we have seen a couple of things. We think they're going to be very helpful to our case. So all I'd say, all I'm attempting to do, and let me make this clear, there's nothing, we're not implying in any way the state did anything untoward here. I want that perfectly clear. Now GM, after all the money we gave them to bail them out, couldn't get this done. That may be another matter altogether. And somebody must have been watching the trial, because between the time the FBI agent testified and they got the data, it was less than 2 days, as I understand it. So somebody hit a button and generated that data in less than 40 hours or 48 hours. So it wasn't hard to access. Again, the state had nothing to do with this delay. I just wanted to raise with the court before they call their timeline expert. We may need some period of time to get our experts to get it digested and then get back with us.
At its core, it's an unexpected witness coming into the trial. I know there have been some cross-examination on that issue in general. So the state has now disclosed an additional witness, and certainly in fairness to the defense, you should have an opportunity to adequately prepare to confront that witness if need be. And I'm sure that witness is down the line, not the next witness the state is calling, since the state indicated that you expect it to be through on Wednesday, and that did not include this witness. So you must have other witnesses and you should be ready to proceed with, and we'll deal with the other issue as it might come up.
And Your Honor, we'll keep you posted. We're going to, we're in court from 9:30 to get back to 6 or 6:30 to be able to talk to experts. So we're going to have to talk with them tonight. But again, we're somewhat constrained as to how much discussions we can have and at what time. Thank you.
And Your Honor, again, we're having to digest it as well, but it's going to be incorporated in our timeline witness, who, yes, is not expected to be called, late tomorrow or Wednesday.
All right. Anything else before the jury comes?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Bring the jury. All right, very good. Good morning. Okay, day number 16. Ladies and gentlemen, you might notice that a few of your jurors are missing. Those jurors have been excused. I see many of you are masked up. We hopefully we do everything we can to keep everyone safe, including members of the court. I'm not going to order any wearing of masks by jurors, but encourage it. But we have excused 2 jurors and now we'll have 2 other jurors who will move up to be among the first 12 jurors. And that means we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Still have 3 alternates remaining. So juror number 441. Who is 441? All right. Number 441, you're a member of the first 12, and juror number 326. 326, you're a member of the first 12. Of course, it doesn't matter where you sit. You just need to know that. And with that, we're ready to move forward. State's case, next witness.
Thank you.
The state calls Ryan Kelly.
Do you affirm the testimony that the recording which shall be the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. Please read in this.
Ryan Kelly, Kelly.
Your Honor, for the record, we're calling Agent Kelly for limited purposes this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Agent Kelly, could you please tell the jurors where you work?
I'm a special agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED.
And what is your position at SLED?
I'm a senior special agent.
And in your position as a senior special agent, were you involved in the investigation into the deaths of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at some exhibits here. This takes exhibit 464.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell
Yes,
us what
ma'am.
that is?
These are the buccal swabs of Philip Beach, Renee Beach, Robin Beach, and John Murdaugh.
And it takes 465.
These are the buccal swabs of Ronald Freeman. Let's see.
466.
The buccal swab of Michael List.
467.
The buccal swab of Matthew Luce.
And 468.
It's a buccal swab I'm trying to see. It's a buccal swab of Curtis Smith.
And Agent Kelly, who collected those buccal swabs?
I did.
Okay, and how did you collect them?
We have a process where we put on rubber gloves and we have Q-tips that are sealed. We break the packaging, unseal the Q-tip. We insert one Q-tip into the side of their cheek and we obtain a buccal swab sample. We then remove the Q-tip, seal it in an envelope, seal the envelope. We then take the second Q-tip, which is in the packet. We break the seal, insert it into the other cheek where we swab. That Q-tip is then secured into a sealed envelope, and then the two separate sealed envelopes are then placed into a third envelope where it's sealed and signed an initial on the seal.
And you did that with each of these buccal swabs?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to admit state's exhibits 464, 465, 466, 467, and 468.
They are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further questions for Senior Special Agent Kelly at this time.
Cross-examination.
No questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your next witness.
Rachel Nguyen.
Do you affirm the testimony about the recording this charge that we repeat to help you die?
I do.
See the witness stand. You can adjust the mic if you have to. State your name again, please, for the record. Spell your last name.
Rachel Nguyen, Nguyen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Agent Nguyen, could you please tell the jurors who you work for?
I work for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, most commonly known as SLED.
And how long have you worked at SLED?
I've worked at SLED for approximately 8.5 years.
Could you pull the microphone a little closer so we can make sure to hear you or speak up a little? Thank you. And what is your position at SLED?
I am a forensic scientist within the DNA casework department at the SLED Forensics Laboratory.
So what does that mean? Tell us a little bit more about your job.
Like my job duties?
Yes.
So I am responsible for direct DNA analysis when requested by a DNA analyst. What that is the beginning portion of the laboratory section component of DNA analysis. That involves DNA extraction as well as DNA quantitation. Extraction meaning to separate any possible DNA from a sample, such as a swab or a cutting. And quantitation would be to see how much, if any, is present in a sample. I'm also responsible for serology analysis as well as evidence processing. Serology analysis is body fluid identification. At SLED, we test for blood, semen, and saliva. Evidence processing would be to process items for possible touch DNA or ownership DNA. Touch DNA would be to retrieve any possible DNA on an item from handling it. Ownership DNA would be potentially retrieving any DNA from wearing an article of clothing. In addition to those types of analysis, I also issue reports on my findings when appropriate. I am able to technically and administratively review reports by other serologists, and then I provide courtroom testimony when required.
Now, you must have some kind of special training and education to be able to do these things. Can you tell us about that?
So I have 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees from the University of New Haven, one in forensic science and one in biology. Upon being employed within the DNA casework department, I underwent approximately a year-long training program under a court-qualified forensic serologist. During this time, I was able to observe as well as practice the different types of serological analysis as well as evidence processing. I was also taught how to issue reports based on any findings, as well as technically and administratively review any reports issued by other serologists. I also was able to observe courtroom testimony. At the end of my training program, I then underwent a competency testing phase. This phase is to test my knowledge and abilities to perform these types of analysis independently. The competency testing phase was comprised of 4 elements: a written exam, an oral exam, a mock case to perform analysis on, as well as mock courtroom testimony. Once those 4 components were successfully completed, I was then deemed able to perform independent analysis on casework. In addition to my serology and evidence processing training, I also, as I mentioned, am trained in direct-to-DNA analysis. That was also an approximately year-long training program under a court-qualified DNA analyst. During that time, I was able to observe as well as practice the different types of protocols that are involved. At the end of that training program, once again, I went through a competency testing phase. It was comprised of the same 4 components, and I successfully completed all 4 components, and therefore am also able to perform independent analysis in the area of direct-to-DNA analysis.
Ma'am, I need you to speak into the mic a little better for my benefit, if not for the juror's benefit.
Okay, so, and Agent Nguyen, have you testified in court before?
I have.
And how many times have you testified in court? Just
This will be,
estimate.
this will be my 19th time.
And have you been qualified as an expert when you've testified in prior proceedings?
I have been qualified as an expert.
As an expert in forensic serology?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to qualify Agent Nguyen as an expert in forensic serology.
No objection, ma'am.
She is admitted as an expert in the field of forensic serology.
Okay, Agent Nguyen, you were working in the serology department back in June of 2021.
I was.
And did you examine some items from evidence in the investigation of the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh?
I did.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 63 through 66. I'll have you take a look at these items for us. Are those items that you examined?
Yes, they are. I can identify these items because on the small manila envelopes contained within, I have written the unique case number that was assigned to this case at SLED, as well as each of their item numbers, my initials, and the date I opened the packaging.
Okay, and each of those items is a 300 blackout case.
Yes.
Okay, now what did you do with those items?
So when cartridge casings are submitted for touch DNA, which is what these were submitted for, we process them with a soaking method. So each cartridge case is placed within a tube, submerged within a solution, lightly shaken, and then it has to sit for at least 30 minutes. Once that 30 minutes is up, each individual cartridge case will then be removed from its tube. The solution will be placed poured into a filtration unit. The cartridge case will be dried. It will be labeled with the individual item number and then placed on a rack to further dry thoroughly. The solution that is placed within this filtration unit, the filtration unit looks like an hourglass. So there's a chamber on the top and a chamber on the bottom, and it's separated by a filter. So the liquid that is being poured in the top chamber will filter through the center, which has a filter which we call an MVAC collection. The goal is that if there's any DNA present within these cartridge casings, it will be trapped within the filter. And then the water goes to the bottom. The solution. And then the filter is set out to dry for at least 24 hours. Once the filter is dried, it is then cut, prepared for analysis. So it is cut in half, placed in a tube, labeled with the case number, the item number, and then it is forwarded for further analysis. And that collection from these items was identified as SLED item 7.1.
You, Case Exhibit 459, you could tell us, is that what you collected from those cases there?
Yes, so within here is, as I mentioned, SLED item 7.1. Once again, I recognize this because it has the unique case number, the container number, my name and date on the outside, as well as my name and date and a seal at the top.
And what did you say you did when you collected the, I guess, disc?
So once that collection or the filter is dried, I will cut it in half and then half again. So each plotter will be placed within a tube for DNA analysis. It's labeled with the unique case number, the item number, and it is forwarded for further analysis.
So you forwarded that to DNA for more analysis?
That is correct.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 459 into evidence.
Submitted.
All right. I'm going to show you tapes 33 and 34, which are fired shot shells. Did you perform any kind of testing on those two items?
Yes, so states 33 and states 34 are consistent with SLED item number 9 and 10, which were fired shot shells. These were also submitted to the laboratory for touch processing. These shot shells were swabbed for the touch collection. So basically I take 2 swabs, sterile swabs, and moisten one with the ionized water, and then I will rub it against the exterior of both of them and then leave them out to dry. Once the swabs are dried, I will then prepare them for DNA analysis, which involves just cutting a small portion from each swab, placing it within a tube, labeling it with the case number, the item number, and forwarding it for further analysis. For this, these swabs from the entire exterior of these 2 items were identified as item 10.1.
And I believe item 10.1 is also in State's Exhibit 459, which has been admitted. So you can open that if you need to.
Yes, this also contains item 10.1.
Which were the swabs from these shot shells here.
That is correct.
And then what did you do with those swabs once they were collected?
So they were prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Case Exhibit 18, which I believe is your item 17.
Yes, so I recognize this from the same process. I have the unique case number, the item number, my initials, and the date I opened. Item 17, which is State's Exhibit 18. I also have my initials and date from when I sealed this pouch.
And now what is that
SLED's item 17 are swabs collected from exterior doorknob of storage room door.
And what did you do with that item?
So I prepared these swabs for DNA analysis. Once again, I just cut a small portion from the swabs and forwarded it for further analysis.
States 259.
States 259 I do recognize for the same reason. I have written the case number, the item numbers, my initials, and the date that I opened these items. Found within States 259 are items 15 and 16. Item 15 are swabs from Camel Benelli 12 gauge shotgun receiver forward of the loading port, and swabs identified as item 16 are swabs collected from barrel of Camel Benelli 12 gauge shotgun.
Now, did you do any testing of those swabs?
Yes. Items 15 and 16 had blood requests on them, so these were tested with our presumptive blood test. A presumptive test only indicates the possible presence of a body fluid, and how I did that is because since these are swabs, I took a sterile swab, moistened it with deionized water, then rubbed it gently upon the swabs that are identified as these items. I then tested that test swab for the possible presence of blood. Closer.
This is a personal conversation.
I'm sorry.
You know, the prosecutor is behind you, and you're looking at her, and Mike is in front of you, and Attorney General, if you would move in a different direction, the witness will speak in a different direction, and I can understand what she's saying, or she can speak louder, or speak into the mic rather than speaking to you.
Listen, if you could, please continue explaining what the item is, please.
Yes, so I tested these presumptively for the presence of blood. So item 15, which were the swabs from the receiver forward of the loading port of the Camo Benelli 12 gauge shotgun, tested positive for the possible presence of blood. Item 16, swabs collected from barrel of Camo Benelli 12 gauge shotgun, tested negative for the possible presence of blood. Both sets of swabs were forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis.
Okay, so at this point, we don't know, we just know there's blood.
There's the possible presence of blood on item 15.
Objecting to the leading question.
Pardon?
Objecting to the leading question, Your Honor.
All right. Please do not lead the witness and restate the question.
And what did you say was present, or presumptively present on those items?
So item 15 was positive for the possible presence of blood. Item 16 was negative for the possible presence of blood.
And what did you do after you made those determinations?
So both of these sets of swabs were prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded to the DNA section for further testing.
I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit 398. If you will take a look at those two items and tell the jury what those are.
State's Exhibit 398 are SLED items 22.4 and 22.5, which corresponds to item 22.5 is described as reddish brown debris swabbed from the right side of item 22 receiver, and 22.5 is described as reddish brown debris swabbed from the left side of the item 22 receiver above manufacturer information.
And what did you do with those items?
These items also had a blood request. So the same process as the previous items I just mentioned. I took a sterile swab, moistened it with deionized water, swabbed these swabs, and then with that test swab is what I tested for the presumptive blood test.
Could you please explain any results?
So both items 22.4 and 22.5 tested positive for the possible presence of blood.
And then what did you do with those items once you did the blood test?
These two sets of swabs were then prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded to the DNA section for further testing.
Now, there was a number of guns in this case that were processed. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. Could you tell us about the testing you did on State's Exhibit 89, your item 30, the Mossberg shotgun?
So when items of evidence are submitted to the SLED laboratory, sometimes they have multiple requests of different departments. In this case, item 30, a Mossberg shotgun, had 3 requests for the latent prints department, for the DNA department, as well as the firearms department. So we try to organize it so that no department's analysis conflicts with another department. In this case, this item was forwarded or was sent to the latent prints department for processing. The latent prints examiners are trained in collection for touch DNA as well as swabbing up any stains that they may notice. So item 30 had a blood request on it. The latent prints examiner, which took this item into their custody, requested that I come down as a second pair of eyes to visually examine this item for any possible staining. We located 1 stain, which I tested for the possible presence of blood, and the result was negative.
And after that, are you aware of any further processing on that Mossberg shotgun?
I am not. So I was there with the examiner, and it remained within that examiner's custody the entire time.
All right, let's move on to the other shotguns. We have a Browning shotgun, a Benelli Black Eagle 2, 12-gauge shotgun, and the rifle, in addition to the guns we've already talked about. Can you kind of sum up how you analyze those 3 different guns?
So those 3 different guns that you just mentioned were items 31, 32, and 33. They were done in the same manner as item 30, as I just mentioned. So they were within the custody of the latent prints examiner. I went down to visualize it for any possible staining. The result for these 3 guns, however, was no apparent blood stains present.
And did you do anything else to check for blood at that point?
I did nothing further with these items.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 83. If you could take a look and tell us what items are contained in Exhibit 83.
May I open this?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 83 contains SLED items 51
Agent Nguyen, you don't have to go through the SLED item numbers.
through 60.
Yeah. And those items are what, though?
They are all swabs that were taken from the Chevy Suburban.
And can you tell us what kind of testing was done on those swabs?
So it appears that these swabs were collected because they were Blue Star positive, which to my understanding is a presumptive test used by the crime scene unit to indicate areas of possible blood staining. Since they were already presumptively tested, I used a confirmatory test to test these swabs for the presence of blood. So SLED items 51 through 55 and 57 through 60 were all negative with that testing, which means there is no human blood identified. Item 56, which was swabs collected from steering wheel, had a positive result, which means blood was identified on this item.
And what kind of testing did you do to confirm that blood?
I used a confirmatory test called hemotrace.
And how does hemotrace work?
So Hemotrace is a card test. It's similar to a pregnancy test or more relevant, a COVID test. You take a sample from the item of evidence, place it in a solution, and it should sit there for a while. And then once it has mixed in with the solution will then be placed on this card test, and then a result will be revealed. Results are read after 10 minutes.
And what are the potential results from that test? Just in general, from Hemotrace testing.
There's a positive result or a negative result.
And in this case, what was the result on the steering wheel swab?
On the steering wheel swab, it was positive, which is a result of blood identified.
And then what did you do with that swab once you completed your test?
So item 56 was then prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis.
Okay, I'm going to next show you items, state's exhibit, 251 and 252. Those are marked for identification only. Okay, can you tell us what are those items?
So state's exhibit 251 corresponds to the left fingernail clippings and right fingernail clippings of Margaret Murdaugh. State's exhibit 252 corresponds to the left fingernail clippings and right fingernail clippings of Paul Murdaugh.
So on state's 251, the fingernail clippings from Margaret Murdaugh, what, if anything, did you do to those items?
So state's exhibit 251, what's received is clipping from her fingernails. So I will take a portion of the clippings that have been submitted, place it within a tube, and forward it to the DNA section for further analysis.
Okay, when you say a portion of the clippings, does that mean you clip some more and send to DNA, or what does that mean?
So the literal fingernail clippings are what's being submitted within the envelope. So say there's 5 clippings. I will forward approximately 2 to 3 of what's been submitted, place it within the tube, and that's what will be forwarded for analysis.
And did you do the same process with State's Exhibit 252, the fingernail clippings from Paul Murdaugh?
Yes, State's Exhibit 252 will receive the same preparation for DNA analysis.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move Exhibits 251 and 252 into evidence.
No objection.
They're admitted.
All right, Agent Nguyen, next if you could tell us a little about State's Exhibit 418, which was Alex Murdaugh's shirt. Could you describe how you first processed the shirt when it was initially received by the lab?
So the white shirt from Richard Murdaugh was submitted with a blood request. On June 9th of 2021, I processed this item for the possible presence of blood. So that entails I first visually examined the shirt for any areas that are consistent with the staining of blood. Then I tested these items that I have indicated with our phenolphthalein presumptive test for blood. 2 stains were tested. Both stains were positive for the possible presence of blood. 1 stain located at the exterior front bottom edge of white shirt was forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis. Afterward, okay.
And I'm going to hand you State's 460. Now you just said that stain was processed and sent to DNA. How did you process that? Did you send the whole shirt, or how did that work?
So the stain that I had located, I cut that stain from the shirt. I then prepared it for DNA analysis, which means I cut a small portion of that stain, placed it within the tube, labeled that tube, and forwarded the cutting as well as the portion that I have prepared to the DNA section for further analysis.
And that cutting is contained in State's 460, is that correct?
That cutting is contained in State's 460.
And what date did you perform that initial analysis?
On June 9th of 2021.
And I think you mentioned there was another stain also located on the shirt at that time.
Yes, 2 stains were presumptively tested.
Was that second stain cut on June 8th?
It was not. It remained in the shirt and was identified with the presumptive test result.
Now, due to the ongoing investigation, did you come back and examine that shirt again?
Yes, so afterwards, a request was relayed to me to go back to the shirt and retrieve that stain and forward it for DNA analysis.
Did you do any other testing this second time around?
So when I went to remove that second stain, I met with members of the crime scene unit, Lieutenant Wallace, as well as Special Agent Worley, and they processed the shirt with their LCV testing, which to my understanding is their presumptive test for blood.
And what was discovered during the LCD testing?
So after removing the second stain from the June 9th date that I processed it, 10 additional stains were identified from the LCV processing, which were cut from the shirt and prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded for further testing.
And I will show you page 461. Are those the additional cuttings from the shirt?
Yes, so all the cuttings from the shirt are here.
Okay. Now, as far as you're concerned, did you process the shirt any further?
No, besides preparing these additional stains that were identified, nothing further was done.
And what did you do with those cuttings?
I cut a small portion from each of the stains that was indicated as being positive and forwarded it to the DNA section for further analysis.
All right, and State's Exhibit 418 is the defendant's shorts. How were those shorts processed in comparison to the shirt?
So the shorts also were submitted with a blood request. They were processed in a similar manner. Several stains were tested, however, 2 were positive for the possible presence of blood. A stain located at the front left interior pocket of the pair of green shorts was forwarded for further analysis. This was processed on the same June 9th date of 2021. The shorts were also additionally processed at the same time the shirt was additionally processed to retrieve a second stain that was indicated as the possible presence of blood. And then the same members of the crime scene unit also processed the shirt with their LCV testing.
And I believe you still have Exhibit 460 up there. Does that contain the first cutting from the pair of pants on June 8th?
Yes, State's Exhibit 460 contains the first cutting from the pair of shorts from June 9th, I'm sorry.
And then State's Exhibit 461, what cutting, that contains cutting from the pants on July 21st, is that right?
Yes, so State's Exhibit 461 does contain the additional cuttings, so the second stain that had tested positive on the June 9th processing date, as well as 6 additional stains were indicated from the crime scene unit when they processed the pair of shorts with their LCV testing.
And then what did you do with those cuttings once you took them?
The cuttings for the shorts were prepared for DNA analysis, once again cutting a small portion of the stain and forwarding it for further analysis.
And I'm going to say it's 473. You can take a look at that. Do you recognize that as, what do you recognize that as?
So this appears to be a photo of item 20.2, which is the cutting from front left interior pocket of pair of green shorts from Richard Murdaugh.
Your Honor, this time I would move States 473 into evidence.
No objection.
Submitted.
Mr. McCullough? Okay, and Agent Nguyen, if you could describe to the jurors what they're looking at in that picture.
So this is the stain that was tested, and as you can see, I have labeled it with the SLED item number, both on the physical item as well as it's contained within a manila envelope, which has the unique case number, item number, the request was for blood, the location it was taken from, as well as that it's a cutting. In addition, you can see my initials and date from when I prepared this for DNA analysis.
Okay, and again, sorry, what were the presumptive results of the testing for blood?
So the presumptive results for the stain were that it was positive for the possible presence of blood.
And we talked a little bit about the cuttings of the shirt and the shorts. Just to kind of aid the jury in seeing what you actually did, I'm going to show you states 471 and 472. Do you recognize those pictures?
I do recognize these pictures. They are from the additional processing that occurred on the shirt.
Your Honor, at this time, this tape would move 471 and 472 into evidence.
No objection. They are admitted.
On stage 472, could you just kind of describe to the jurors what they're looking at here and point their attention to the areas in the shirt that you cut? If you can see.
So if you look in the square labeled E7, there is a stain that's circled. It has the item number 19.3 as well as a plus phen. That was the second stain that I had tested on the original processing date that was to be retrieved during this time of processing. Then you can see there are additional stains circled in blue with letter identifiers. Those were areas of staining that was identified from the crime scene unit when they processed with their LCV test. Each stain has the sub-item twice. That is to, one is to stay with the stain once I've cut it, and then one is to stay within the shirt, so in the event that you needed to know where that stain had originated, you could locate it.
And then State's Exhibit 471.
State's Exhibit 471 is the front of the shirt. It has several areas of staining that were circled as a result of the LCV processing by the crime scene unit.
And those are also areas that you cut from the shirt.
Yes, so once again, I have written the sub-item numbers that they were assigned, and then removed each of these stainings along the line that I've outlined, and prepared these stains for further analysis for DNA.
And you said you followed the same process regarding the pins.
That is correct.
All right, let's move on to State's Exhibit 419, which was the shoes of the defendant. Can you tell us what you did with those shoes?
So the shoes, which are described as a pair of red, yellow, and white tennis shoes from Richard Murdaugh, they had the same blood request, so I visually examined the shoes for any areas of possible blood staining and then tested those stainings. 2 were indicated as being possibly positive for the possible presence of blood. One stain was forwarded for DNA analysis, and it was located on the left shoelace of the pair of red, yellow, and white tennis shoes.
And are those cuttings in State's Exhibit 460 that you already have up there with you?
Yes, the cutting from the shoes is contained within State's Exhibit 460.
Your Honor, at this time the state would move States 460 and 461 into evidence.
No objection.
They're admitted.
All right, Agent Nguyen, we're making some good progress here. State's Exhibit 226 was a blue raincoat. Can you explain to the jurors what you did to process that item?
So the blue raincoat also had 2 times of processing. During the first time of processing, which occurred on October 7th of 2021, the raincoat was processed for the possible presence of blood. This was done by myself, as well as members of the crime scene unit, Lieutenant Wallace, as well as Special Agent Moore. I first performed presumptive testing with our blood tests, and then the crime scene unit went behind and then processed with the raincoat with their LCB testing. I tested 71 stains. All 71 stains were negative for the possible presence of blood. After that, the LCV processing took place. No areas of interest were indicated, as interpreted by the crime scene unit as being positive, and therefore, on October 7th of 2021, nothing was forwarded for DNA analysis.
And why was nothing forwarded? Simply?
There were no stains that indicated the possible presence of blood.
All right. Then did you go back and re-examine the raincoat?
Yes, an additional request came in for the raincoat for ownership. Once again, ownership is a collection method for DNA to identify the primary wearer of an item.
Okay. And how did you process that for ownership?
2 sets of swabs were taken off the raincoat. The first set of swabs was identified as item 173.2, which were swabs from interior cuffs, collar, and hood, interior and exterior zipper area, zipper and zipper pull of the blue raincoat. The second set of swabs that were taken from the raincoat were identified as item 173.3, swabs from side openings, zipper area, and both interior portions of exterior pocket of the blue raincoat. In addition,
Excuse me. All hands use states 462. And what are those? Are those the swabs you were just telling us about?
States Exhibit 462 are both sets of swabs that I just recently spoke about from collecting from the raincoat.
And what did you do with those swabs?
These swabs were prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis.
This time the state would move to admit States Exhibit 462.
No objection.
Yeah, it's admitted.
And Agent Nguyen, when you were examining the raincoat for ownership, did you find anything on that raincoat to help with that analysis? Such as hair or anything like that?
So part of the ownership processing is to look for hair. The raincoat, there was no hair found.
Did you also notice anything about the condition of the raincoat?
Yes, so on my evidence worksheet, which is where we document the items that we perform processing on, as well as the respective results, I also document any describing factors. So on this worksheet, in regards to the blue raincoat, I do have that the plastic seam liner was coming off throughout the item.
What did you say?
I called it a plastic seam liner.
Was coming off? I can't hear you.
Coming off throughout the item.
Thank you. All right. Also, in this case, did you receive a number of buccal swabs?
I did.
And that is, what did you do with those buccal swabs when you received them?
So buccal swabs don't require any testing on my part. I just prepare those buccal swabs for DNA analysis. Once again, cutting a small portion off of each swab, placing it within a tube, and forwarding it for further analysis.
All right, Agent Nguyen, the state has no further questions at this time. If you'll please answer any questions from the
Mr. Barber.
Good morning, excuse me, good morning, Agent Nguyen.
Good morning.
Is it agent, am I right? Oh. Very briefly, at the outset, you discussed collecting for DNA testing for the blackout cartridges. Is that correct?
Collecting for the possible presence of touch DNA, yes.
And did you only test 2 of those cartridges?
All 7 were processed using the soaking method.
Okay. With that processing method, any results that you will receive, would they be specific to any one cartridge, or would it just be for the collection of all 7?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you have results for DNA from the way that you collected the sample for a specific shell case, or would it be for all 7 as a set?
Okay, I just want to clarify, I did say there were 7 cartridges, there were only 6. So although they are being individually soaked, they are being combined within that filtration unit, so the results would be from all of the cartridges together.
Okay. And you had positive presumptive tests for 2 shotguns, correct? Portions of 2 shotguns?
Do you have a item number that corresponds?
I can get those in a second. Do you remember there are 2 shotguns you just testified had positive presumptive blood tests? One was SLED item number 15.
Yes, so the swabs from the Benelli shotgun, item 15, was positive for the possible presence of blood. However, I believe you mean the second set of swabs, item 16, that was negative.
And then there was later a SLED item 22.
Oh yes, the 2 sets of swabs from SLED item 22 were both positive for the possible presence of blood.
So I guess, what exactly is a presumptive test?
So a presumptive test is indicating the possible presence of a body fluid, in this case, blood. It's not confirming the presence, it's just an indication so that we can further test that stain.
And how does it indicate the possible presence of blood?
So the phenolphthalein test interacts with the hemoglobin found within blood, and that's what it's basically giving a positive result with.
Is it fair to say that it changes color? It's like a dye and it changes color?
So it's a color change test. Based on the presence of the hemoglobin, a swab that's being tested will turn a bright pink color.
And is that presumptive test specific to human blood?
It is not specifically human blood. It can be human blood or animal blood.
Could chemicals other than blood cause a positive test result?
So the phenolphthalein test has what we call false positives, which can give a positive result, but it is not blood. Those include copper salts, nickel salts, rust, as well as some plant and peroxidases, which include broccoli, cauliflower, horseradish. It also can give a positive result for pus and sometimes in the presence of bacteria.
Okay, so there are a number of things that could give a positive result. Is that why you also have a confirmatory test?
If we test something for the possible presence of blood, we don't typically do a confirmatory test unless it's requested. We just store that sample for DNA analysis.
Who would request a confirmatory test?
Usually an investigator of an agency may request it. Sometimes solicitors or defense attorneys may request an additional test.
And the confirmatory test, I think you testified, is just basically like a COVID test?
It works similar to a COVID test.
2 lines means human blood?
It'll have a line to indicate that the test is working properly, which is a control line. And then if it is positive, it will have an additional second line. If that second line does not show, that means that the test is negative.
Is it an accurate test?
I would say that it's an accurate test as long as the control line is present.
It's more accurate than the presumptive test. That's why you use it, correct?
So the confirmatory test is saying that yes, blood is identified on the item that's being tested.
Human blood.
Human blood, as well as higher primate blood and thorough blood.
And you did not do any confirmatory tests on the shotguns?
I did not do any confirmatory tests on the shotgun swabs.
And that was simply because no one asked you to, correct?
In effort to not consume any of the sample on the swabs, as a swab is a small area, we just forward it for DNA analysis.
But in the Chevy Suburban, you did perform a hemotrace test?
Yes, because that these swabs for the Chevy Suburban were already previously processed with another presumptive test by the crime scene unit, we could not presumptive test behind because our 2 tests work in a similar manner.
Whose decision was it to do the hemotrace test on the Chevy Suburban?
That is typically how we process items of evidence that we receive from the crime scene unit in the form of swabs based on any of their presumptive testing.
But like, who made the decision to do the hemotrace test on that steering wheel? The name of a person?
I perform the hemotrace test.
On your own initiative?
No, that is a common way we do testing on swabs that have already been collected based on a presumptive test.
Did someone instruct you to perform a hemotrace test on the steering wheel?
No, it is part of our general operating procedures.
But you did not perform hemotrace tests on the weapons?
The swabs that were collected off of the weapons, no, because they were not presumptively testing prior, so I could use our presumptive test on those items.
Did you perform or prepare any samples from the victim's clothing or bodies other than the fingernail clippings that you discussed?
I do not believe so.
Okay, so the only thing from the body of Maggie Murdaugh or Paul Murdaugh that you tested were the fingernail clippings from Maggie Murdaugh.
So I prepared the fingernail clippings for DNA analysis, as well as the buccal swabs from those individuals.
Right. But nothing else from their bodies, correct?
No, I did not test their
Or
clothing.
their clothing. Or their clothing, sorry.
I did not test their clothing.
When looking at the T-shirt that you just testified about, and those cuttings, I think you have opened a bag and the cuttings were there and you prepared them. Did you perform any serology tests on those cuttings?
No, I just removed those cuttings from the shirt as the result of the crime scene testing.
Are you aware of any serology tests being performed on those cuttings?
Of the shirt?
Yes, of those big shirt cuttings.
I believe there was further analysis performed on those cuttings.
Did somebody other than you later perform serology tests on those cuttings, to your knowledge?
It is my understanding that there was additional testing on those cuttings.
Serology testing,
Serology testing.
specifically hemotrace.
I believe there was hemotrace performed on the cuttings from the shirt.
But that, just to be clear, that wasn't performed by you.
I did not perform hemotrace on any of the cuttings on the shirt.
Did you perform any hemotrace tests on the shorts or tennis shoes?
I did not perform any hemotrace testing on the shorts or the shoes.
Just, I guess, maybe a little bit of background to understand maybe who does what. When you're working on this case, do you have like a direct supervisor?
I do have a direct supervisor.
And who is that person?
Her name is Laura Hash.
And is she the person who directs your activities as regard to this case?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Objections overruled.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is Lieutenant Laura Hash the person who would direct your activities with regards to this case?
So, based on our operating manual, as well as my training experience, based on the requests of certain items that are submitted, I will decide how those are tested. However, if additional processing is requested, those usually are communicated to me through my direct supervisor.
And just for clarity, we've talked a bit about DNA, but you're just preparing samples and they go to someone else who does the analysis and reports. That's not you, correct?
That's correct. I am just preparing the samples for further analysis.
Is the only hemotrace test that you did for this case the steering wheel? Well, strike that. The Chevy Suburban, I believe there may have been some negative tests from the Suburban, but were those the only hemotrace tests you did for this case?
No, I did hemotrace the swabs from the Chevy Suburban. I also hemotrace tested swabs collected from a Ford F-250.
And what were the results from the Ford F-250?
There were 4 swabs submitted from the Ford F-250, and the results for all 4 of those sets of swabs were negative for human blood.
So the steering wheel was the only positive test that you did for hemotrace?
Yes, the steering wheel from the Chevy Suburban is the only positive hemotrace result I have.
Just one final question or a little set of questions. It seems like sometimes the crime scene people or department, I shouldn't just say people, I guess they're a department, do presumptive blood tests. Is that correct?
Yes, it's my understanding that the crime scene unit does perform presumptive blood tests.
And the initials LCV have been used. I think you might have mentioned. What does that mean?
It stands for Leuco Crystal Violet.
And can you describe that test?
I don't know much about the test. I just know that it is a test that the crime scene unit uses as their presumptive blood test.
Do you know what color it turns when there's a positive result?
It'll turn a purple color.
So with, I think let me ask this. Why, we saw a picture of the shirt gridded out. You remember that exhibit?
I do.
Why was the presumptive test done? Was at the SLED laboratory? Is that the location that was?
Are you asking about the LCV processing?
Yes, where was that test conducted?
That was done at the SLED laboratory.
Why was that done by the crime scene unit and not the serology unit?
We do not use LCV testing, and I am unsure as to why that particular test was chosen to be used by the crime scene unit.
Because earlier, you did tests on the hem, right? The pheno tests on the front and back hem of the shirt, is that correct?
I did.
But then the crime scene unit later came back and in the lab did a different kind of test.
That is correct.
And you don't know why?
I was not part of that decision. I was just notified that they would be performing that test while I was retrieving the additional stain that I had tested earlier.
And finally, it seems like if something is tested presumptive in the field and comes to you, you do a confirmatory test. Is that what happened with the Chevy Suburban?
Yes, that's correct.
But if something comes to you and there's not been a presumptive test, like with the shotguns, then you don't perform a confirmatory test?
No, I do the presumptive test.
Do you know why that's the policy?
It's an effort to not consume as much sample on a swab. A swab is it's like a sterile Q-tip, so essentially the surface area is very small. So in efforts to not consume the sample and to give more for DNA analysis, that's what's done.
If something goes to DNA analysis and there's some result, does it ever come back for a blood test to see if the source of the DNA was blood?
To be phen tested?
No, for hemotrace test.
As I mentioned, hemotrace testing can be requested on the back end, as any of our CAR tests can be.
In your experience, I think we had some testimony about your experience. If DNA is found on something, is there ever then a time that you go back and say, hey, was the source of this DNA blood, and do a hemotrace test?
Hemotrace specifically, to my knowledge, no. But in my experience, there have been times that solicitors or defense attorneys will request a CAR test be done on a sample after the DNA analysis has been performed.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
None from the state, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.